Hi guys, this is Carla Garrick. Welcome back to Manch Talk. Today is of course Wednesday, so thank you for joining me if you're joining me online or later on YouTube. And of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, please do subscribe to my channel, Carla Garrick TV, The Art of Independence. Today we're going to be talking about what's up with the gold standard, what's happening up at the State House, what's been up in my life, as I like to do, maybe talk a little bit about some of these books. But I wanted to start with this French documentary film crew that's been in town. So over the years, with my role with the Free State Project, and for people who don't know what that is, the Free State Project is a concentration strategy to bring libertarians and liberty lovers, people who understand the non-aggression principle and property rights, to move to New Hampshire. So it's a very unique and kind of, for some people, radical, and for other people, kind of obvious solution to this division we see in the world. And so over the years, we've had many documentary film crew come in to make shows for other parts of the world. We did have a really big series that NBC out of Boston did maybe a couple of years ago that you can find either on NBC Boston or on YouTube. They have it up there as well. It's a 13-part series over 2.5 hours of footage. We've had Swiss documentary crews come in. We've had French before. That was probably like 10 years ago. I do need to find them, the clips from that. So that was kind of a neat experience. You know, they come, they like to meet different people in the community and, you know, sort of thread a story. One of the interesting things was I, over the years, have been like, I'm not really willing to like manufacture an event to make part of the story happen, right? Like, I feel like if you're making a documentary, it should really just be the natural progression of someone's life. So by way of example, we had done a press conference for Ian Freeman, who was convicted of conspiracy to commit money laundering and put in prison for over 8 years because basically, I mean, the short version is because the jury doesn't understand crypto, because the US government has used lawfare to go after crypto pioneers over the years because they don't understand sound money, and because, you know, he kind of had a loud mouth and some really good arguments about, you know, why it's probably smart to be for limited small government. And so we had done this press conference sort of in the arena with Ross Ulbricht's release. President Trump did keep his promise and release Ross Ulbricht with a full clemency, full pardon from prison. So the next ones, there are several crypto pioneers, actually a bunch, and there is now starting to become a real push on the federal level to say to Trump and the administration, hey, if you guys understand what's going on here with the issues with sound money, and because we can tell you kind of support crypto, let's release all the crypto political prisoners. So when the documentary film crew came in, they were like, hey, can you guys do like a rally or another press conference for Ian? And as everyone knows, my mom had just passed it. I just didn't have the wherewithal to make it happen. So I was like, look, dudes, you guys are going to have to come to the New Movers Party on Friday nights at our community center on the west side here in Manchester. And then they actually came out to the house as well for a good full afternoon on Monday afternoon. It was interesting because their channel or the show that they do it for is probably kind of similar to our 60 Minutes, I would guess. It's an hour-long show that views on Sunday nights in France, 2 million person viewership. And so the thrust of the show is libertarianism. What is it, right? Like, it seems like the word is bubbling up more and more, both positively and negatively. And it seems like a lot of people are actually confused about it as well, even people in our community. So I guess my through line has to do mostly with Ian talking about, if you want to sign the petition, you could go to freeiannow.org. But, we gave a little speech at the New Movers Party about him. And then, fortunately, it kind of worked out. His wife, Bunny, had gone to see him on Monday. And I managed to hit her when she was driving home. So we had a good phone call. So I think that'll be a really good through line. But what's exciting about it is that people are more curious about what is libertarianism. And at the heart of it, for people who don't fully understand the philosophy, it is a political philosophy. And of course, free staters are beyond that, right? Like people do politics, but this is actually a cultural movement, right? Like people are coming or are building sort of second generation, next generational stuff at this stage, which is pretty exciting because New Hampshire is the live free or die state, and so it feels like it just fits in really well with the culture that is already here. So libertarianism, of course, is the political philosophy that believes in limited government. On the farthest extreme, people would say maybe even no government, privatize everything. But as minimal government as possible, and then everyone is supposed to adhere to the non-aggression principle, which is, you shouldn't use force against someone unless you're actually acting in self-defense. So it's not pacifism. And so, I actually think it's a philosophy that should appeal more broadly than it does, especially in these very trying, binary, yelling from two fringes at each other extremes that we find ourselves in. I am also exhausted, in case everyone can't tell, because I went to see Kraftwerk last night in Boston. It was an amazing show. It was so cool. I've been a fan since, the late 80s, early 90s. In fact, my ex-boyfriend from South Africa saw the photo and texted me this morning, and he was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you guys got to see that." So that was really exciting. Always fun to go to Boston, hung out with some friends, had some good Vietnamese food, but we started at the dodgiest Chinese restaurant I have been to, and I used to live in Chinatown, so that is saying something. It was called the Empire Garden, and my friend just picked it because she picked literally the first name on what came up for searches. And when we were driving down to Boston, I started just looking up so that we could order, so we'd be on time and all of that, at the menu, and it was like 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, and I'm like, I don't think we should eat here, or let's make it a real adventure. So we went to look, and we were like, hell no. So I think that poor, really beautiful space, right? Like it must have been an old theater. So very elegant space, but was not giving off the vibes that you were going to survive that meal. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of bills is actually this inspection sticker bill that we've been talking about for the past few weeks, because it passed the House. So that is a really big deal because it does not, people are not sure what's going to happen in the Senate, but they also have been trying for almost a decade to get this through. So I think the fact that it did go through the House and it with a decent, not like million majority, but, it passed with a majority. But what I love and what I want to talk about with regard to this specifically is the outreach that liberty activists were doing for this particular thing. So shout out to all the activists that have been out there. You know who you are. I don't want to dead name you or dox you on the show unless you want to be, so I should have asked. So I won't say who you are, but part of the activism was actually going in Manchester and in other areas to look at cars on the street that had expired inspection stickers and then leaving a flyer on the car saying, hey, call your rep and let them know you don't want to have this mandatory inspection system, which might have made some sense at some stage, but really cars are pretty safe now, right? And it's like the one excuse you still hear is the bold tires. And I feel like maybe we've evolved beyond that, folks. So what they did is they were going around the west side, and here I'm going to do a little shaming, so I am going to name names. But they also went to the State House and took photos of any state rep with an expired inspection sticker, right? Because it's like, you know, I mean, I know politics is just the art of hypocrisy, and that people seem to think, oh, you can literally say this one thing here and then say the exact opposite thing here, and no one's going to notice, and people are going to think you're an honorable person with integrity. Well, after a while, we kind of notice that isn't the case, right? So sadly, they discovered, and she's our rep here on the west side, Trinidad Telez, I guess, had an inspection sticker that has expired over a year ago. And get this, she voted against the bill. And it's like, that is hypocritical, and that is pretty shady, honestly. It's like, it's you know, it's not great. So I think that we should, you know, try and be a little more honorable in our actions. I talk about this a lot on my X Lives, which people are welcome to follow on X under my name, Carla Garrick, how, you know, you're constantly, if you're trying to improve as a human, you're actually trying to align your thoughts, words, and deeds, right? Like, you want to be thinking the same thing as the way you're behaving. I mean, otherwise it's kind of nuts, right? Like, if you're behaving a certain way, but you hold these other beliefs in your head, why would you do that? So, I mean, I'm not literally calling this lady nuts, but I am calling her a hypocrite. So this HB 649 did pass the House back last week, and it eliminates the state's annual vehicle safety inspection requirements for non-commercial vehicles, scrapping the need for the stickers, and it passed 212 to 143. So it was a wide margin. I'm not actually, I don't have the numbers on top of my head of what the split is this year, but I do know it's quite a bit larger than last year. So it's a big deal because New Hampshire is actually only one of 12 states that still requires this. So it's not like we're asking for something, like we're a low tax state. We shouldn't be requiring this as compared to other worse places, right? And if this becomes law, only commercial vehicles, so big rigs and the ones that could actually make things really dangerous, would still need inspection stickers, which does make sense to me. So this one's going to the Senate, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. We have gotten a lot more liberty-friendly senators. 5, actually. There is a majority of Republican senators now, and even some of those who came in, I mean, are you know, Republican plus, like they're extra on individual rights. So, you know, it might pass, and that would be a big win for everyone in the state, right? And those are the opportunities we need to be looking for, is when we can do things that equally benefit everyone. Because where all this drama and negativity and fighting and polarity comes from is from this notion that, oh, we're going to give special things here and special things here and special things here. And later everyone's like, well, I want my special thing. And now you've got hundreds of special things yelling, right, for handouts. And we're seeing that, of course, with DOGE and the U.S. aid and the amount of fraud we're seeing there. And ironically, that whole setup, right? So it's kind of like we have these NGOs. We don't call them that in America. We call them nonprofit organizations. But everywhere else in the world, they're called NGOs, non-government organizations. But they basically, turns out, are just slush funds for government funds very often. And not only slush funds, and people know, I've talked about this numerous times on the show, If you are a nonprofit that is supposed to be solving X problem, we'll say for this scenario, you're a nonprofit and you're supposed to be reducing homelessness. If you have not reduced homelessness, why is your CEO making $500,000 in salaries? And that is not an exaggerated number. It is shocking to see the salaries that are being paid to people in NGOs. And based on those, it is very clear that there is some malfeasance, slushy stuff going on. So always something to keep an eye on, but let's see, what else do we have here? I do want to mention this because people who've been following me for a long time know I've worked on police accountability work for many, many years. It was one of my main focuses because, with the body cams, my own court case where I won, making it legal to film police officers during the execution of their duties in public, their public duties. So, if you're pulled over next to the road, or even if you see someone else getting arrested, and you just want to be like a citizen's hero, you can just literally take your phone, just film it, so that we have an account of what happened. Because sadly, someone kind of messed up the right to know laws, and body cam footage in New Hampshire is actually not subject to the right to know laws, except in cases of excessive force. And speaking of excessive force, last week, I guess on February 26th, it might have been the day before, there was an officer-involved shooting in Londonderry at the Planet Fitness. And it was funny because I was looking on the website, and it was like, this shooting at Planet Fitness, and then the next one was like, ex-cop robs Target. And I was like, whoa, it's not giving me good and happy vibes here. So it's not entirely clear, as it often isn't, what exactly happened based on the initial, this is the AG's office press release, says that it was at Planet Fitness down by the Orchard View Drive in Londonderry. Someone had reported a shot fired. I guess the guy had left the Planet Fitness, was in his car somewhere. The police came, and somewhere in all of that decided he was armed, or possibly he was armed, but they unleashed holy hell on him and killed him. So basically, it says here that according to the initial police dispatch notes, the adult male in a vehicle was reportedly armed and confronted the officers. During this encounter, several gunshots were fired. Adult male was struck by the gunfire. Londonderry Fire Department tried to render aid. However, he was pronounced dead on the scene. Now, sometimes, I have yet to find a officer-involved shooting, and please note the passive voice there, that has not resulted in an exoneration for the police. So I'm just going to assume that's going to happen here. But it is worth watching and sort of knowing what those rates are. Some of you may recall back in maybe 2018-ish, when I was following this very actively, we had, in 1 year, 25% of the murders that were committed in New Hampshire were police officers who killed people. That year, I believe there were only 13 murders, or maybe it was 24, but it was like, wow. And I think if someone was interested in doing a great public service and a kind of like right to know thing, where we've talked about, hey, can we make the government truly public in a way that is searchable and usable and actually useful, as opposed to, oh, now I have to go dig over here and go dig over here. I think having a leaderboard with officer-involved shootings per year and just having those numbers as compared to what the homicide rate is. Because here's the reality. New Hampshire is so safe that your chances of getting murdered by a police officer are actually really high. So that doesn't seem like a good scenario. So again, probably something we should keep an eye on. All right, then there's all these bills coming up at the State House. So One that people should definitely be keeping an eye on, and if you're a gun person, this one is a giant red flag, if you know what I mean. So that's House Bill 159 FN, which means it already has its financial note on it. So it's not a classic red flag in the sense that it doesn't have an extreme risk protection order, which you'll see in many other states when they're doing this. But it's still a back door into that whole world. So New Hampshire very uniquely does not have red flag laws. And in fact, when I have to sell Florida and New Hampshire side by side to be like, which one's better? And I actually literally had this conversation with DeSantis once. I was like, look, we're better than you and we're the real free state because we don't have red flag laws and Florida does. So this bill is called Authorizing the State to Report Mental Health Data for Firearms Background Check Purposes and providing for processes for the confiscation of firearms following certain mental health related court proceedings and for relief from mental health firearms disabilities. Okay, if you're as confused as I am by that word salad, I will tell you the following. This did pass the House on March 11th, so that is problematic. This is one of those where it's like, oh, I think we're going to have to kill it in the Senate. And the first public hearing was just recently in February, maybe like a month ago. So it passed the House in March, and it's gone on to the Senate Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. So I would highly recommend if you, definitely go read the bill and decide for yourself if you feel one way or the other about it. But tying, like half our problems are just, we're trying to regulate everything to the nth degree, which in my opinion is actually causing some deep level of dysfunction and possible insanity. So this also very much pulls in a lot of federal stuff that I don't think we necessarily want to have as sort of part of our unique New Hampshire advantage sorry, I got the time thing and then my mind blanked. So HB 159, if you don't like it, let your senators know. So that is the red flag law. Then it looks like I printed the same thing twice. All right, then there's this one from the gold standard. Now, everyone knows NHLA, that is the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. Every week, they generate one of these gold standard documents that tells you sort of from a liberty perspective which bills are yay or nay. They, and literally yay or nay, which is kind of funny. And so there are some crypto bills coming up. There is HB 639, relative to the use and disputes over blockchain and digital currencies. This one is out of committee, ought to pass 14-3. So then there are some prohibiting the land not owned by poster, criminal justice. So this is HB 87, is also a yay, ought to pass. Looking through the rest of this, I mean, there's so much going on. I ran into one of my friends out with the dog on the trail this morning, and I was like, hey, what have you been up to? And she was like, oh, I was up there testifying on EFAs, and then I went for this, and then I went for that. And that's always great to see. Because why? It can be so overwhelming, right? Especially for people who have a lot of interests to be like, what should I champion? And then you're like, oh, there are a million things I could do. Maybe you end up not doing anything. So really do try and focus on what you're passionate about that really lights up your eyes or makes you go, yeah, I want to show up for that, right? For a lot of people, it is gun rights. For some people, it's open government and accountability. And in fact, I should mention, we are coming into Sunshine Week. What is that? That is our national FOIA or National Right to Know week, where the press and people who work on open, transparent, and accountable government, we actually have the word accountable in the New Hampshire Constitution, really try and highlight how important it is to have an open government so that we can know what's going on. And all of us who work a lot with bureaucracy do recognize that there is this flip that's happening where our privacy is becoming less and less. The government is in many, many ways illegally surveilling us, collecting data, all of that. If you're, more on the Democrat side, everything they tell you that Elon Musk is doing with your information, they're already doing with your information, by the way. So if you find it outrageous, maybe you should find it outrageous for the principle of it and not who's got it, right? All right, I want to talk, I just got the warning on time, so I do want to mention a few things about these books. Okay, so this one, and thank you for everyone who's leaving me comments on YouTube. They asked about the books last week. This one is basically about applying cognitive behavioral therapy to your life. What is that? It is, if you are the kind of person who gets triggered in the same scenario over and over and over again, then it is you that need to fix whatever is dysregulating how you are behaving. So by way of example, starting with the libertarian flavor from the start of the show, lots of libertarians don't like authority. So they get really confused about what's going on, and someone will tell them, oh, you can or cannot do this, and they're like, I am going to freak out to such a level that it just causes all kinds of downstream problems. Instead of doing that, maybe figure out what's triggering you. This book can help. So what cognitive behavioral therapy does is it helps you to identify every time you're behaving in a certain way. So you got to at least have the wherewithal and slow your brain enough to be able to do that. And once you have recognized a pattern of behavior that does not serve you, then you can read this book and start to do better. This book is a classic. I always used to call it Getting Toys because that's how I would read it, but it is Getting to Yes. It is a very good book. I read it probably 20 years, I don't know, whenever it came out. Classic. It helps you in a straightforward, very concise way to know how to work with people where you don't have agreement and to come to actual workable solutions. And of course, that means actually meeting people to some extent where they are, if they can change. And then, of course, also recognizing when people are unwilling to change, that you perhaps yourself have to change your behavior. And that could even just be cutting that person out of your life. But I don't want to cut you guys out of my life, not today, but I must because I just got the wrap up. So thank you for joining me for this week's Manch Talk. I'll be back here again next week. In the meantime, you can find me everywhere on social media under my name, Carla Garrick, and I will see you guys back here next week. Thanks.